Hey guys, this is your girl Lira, and you're listening to Self Reflection Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Self Reflection Podcast. I pray and I hope that this conversation reached you well today. And if you're not doing your best, like always, I'm going to remind you to create some moment for self reflection. Our podcast is all about self reflection. Even when we have guests on the podcast, right, we're always doing a moment of self reflection. So I want to remind you, if you're not feeling your best in this moment, go ahead and create a moment for silence. You can meditate, pray. And if you cannot deal with the emotions that you're feeling in this moment, reach out, right? Get the support that you need in this moment, because sometimes that's all we need. Listening ear. We're going to get into our conversation today, but before we do that, I want to encourage you, if you've yet to subscribe to Self Reflection Podcast, please go ahead and hit that subscription button. I'll truly appreciate it as we seek to grow our community here. Today, we are going to be talking. Well, I just found out that she could be my sister from Cameroon. I'm just kidding. But today, we are going to be talking to Isha Gaye. Isha is the founder of Afriknoire. Thank you for joining us on Self Reflection Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Lira. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Before we get into our conversation, can you please let our family here on Self Reflection Podcast know who you are, a little bit of your background? Yeah.
Absolutely. So my name is Isha Gaye. I am originally from the Gambia, but I've lived in the US for such a long time now. I'm not even sure if I can rightfully say that I'm Gambian. But yeah, I'm Gambian American, and I am the founder and CEO of Afriknoire.
Love that. What ignite your fire into art?
That's such an interesting question. And I think because I have this platform and I have this magazine, people automatically think that I'm like a creative. And funnily enough, I'm not. So I always say this, I can barely draw a sun. Like, honestly, like I'm the worst artist. I didn't really grow up, being exposed to art. I grew up to a very strict immigrant father who was like, you need to read your books and that's all you need to do. So all I did growing up was I read, but I always had a very active imagination, I think. It's probably because I was always reading. But I don't really consider myself an artist, but I am a lover of art. And I think for a long time, that's something that resonated with me, was how people could tell such powerful stories through art. And with starting this platform, it was just a way to kind of lean into that a little bit more and also explore the different creatives and artists specifically on the African continent.
I would have never guessed you were not an artist, because when I went on your page, I was like, wow, beautiful art. She must really be part of
that community. I'm trying to be a part of that community.
I think I would still consider you an artist because you created a platform that is for artists, but also it's the creation within you, that makes it an art.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I do get that a lot. I think it's a bit of imposter syndrome on my end.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
I know, right? I came to the right place.
Yes, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I totally, I agree with that. I think sometimes it's just hard as people to like put yourself in that space of saying like, I am this, I feel like, because I've grown up always having that thought, like I'm not an artist, but I like art. It's kind of hard to pivot into that mindset, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. What made you want to create this platform in the first place?
Yeah. I feel like it's such a loaded answer because it wasn't just one day that I woke up and I was like, I'm going to create this magazine, this platform. I think it was a series of things. One, the direction that my life was headed, and things personally that were happening in my life that I was kind of trying to find my way. And I felt like I wasn't where I was meant to be. And I felt that deeply. I was on my way to law school, which was an interesting journey in of itself, because I feel like that was something that for the longest time I said I was going to be a lawyer because I felt like that was what was expected of me. It was either that or a doctor or engineer. I mean, the
I'm
big
like,
four.
yes.
So, and I prided myself with that. I studied economics and political science in college, and I was, I led a mock trial team. That was like my entire personality.
Yeah.
So when I graduated in 2020, I was a COVID grad. And the world shut down. I moved back home with my aunt and uncle. And there was a lot of time for self-reflection.
Mm,
And it took me a while, but really sitting with myself and asking myself the hard questions of why was I pursuing this when it wasn't bringing me any joy?
yeah.
What was my purpose for pursuing this? And I have an aunt that's very introspective, and she is very spiritually advanced. I will say
Hmm.
she's someone that's very in tune with who she is. And she, I had those conversations with her, and she was like, "Yeah, I didn't even know why you wanted to be a lawyer anyway." And just hearing that, I think it validated something within me that knew that I didn't want to really pursue law. And hearing somebody say, like, you don't have to be a lawyer,
Yeah.
you can do anything else.
Yeah.
I think that was the beginning of the end of going to law school. But then that obviously opened up another can of worms of like, if that's not who I am, then who am I?
Mm,
And it took some time, but I think reflecting on the things that I love Africa. I love African creatives. I love African art. And I knew that there was a gap in the market, especially in the United States, where that wasn't really being celebrated. I mean,
mhm.
now I think it's becoming a bit more mainstream, but I mean, 10 years ago, you wouldn't pick up a magazine or go online and see, African creatives being
Yeah.
celebrated. And even now, it's still like, the very top, performers or artists that are really celebrated. And I just think that everyday creatives who are making art out of their lived experiences, out of their pain, should also be celebrated. So,
My
yeah.
goodness. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love this because I love Africa too,
Yeah.
And to see that you're giving voice to people that may not have it, right? Because I know it's challenging to be an African creator
Yeah.
and get out there into the mainstream media. So to see that you created a whole platform to do that for us, like, hats off to you, girl. Like, thank you. No,
Oh,
for real, thank you
mhm.
so much because I know I have had conversations with many, many African artists in Africa, and one of their biggest like challenges, like, where do I put my stuff? Like, how can I showcase myself? How can
Yeah.
I get out there more? I recently had an artist that reached out to me. um he's from Cameroon and he makes music, and he was like, how can I get my stuff out there? Who do you know? I'm like, that's a different world that I don't really know that world like
Mm.
that. So to be able to see that there's a platform for artists, creators, um that's really beautiful and we need it. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Ah,
you.
I'm gonna cry. Because I love Africa with a passion, and I think it is us, the young ones, that have to push it forward, right?
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
can't keep waiting for our ancestors to come do it for us. So, thank you. What are some misconceptions that you had about Africa in your early years? Because I saw a
Did you
video.
watch my video?
Yes, that's where I got this from.
I was
I'm
like,
like,
that's a
I wonder
very specific question. I
what.
was like, did you watch my video?
I
Oh my
did. I
goodness.
did a
That
little
is so
snooping
funny.
around.
No, I love it. You're a great journalist. I mean, there are so many. And it's so funny to me because, as I started this platform and my entire team is based in Africa. And that was something that I did very intentionally. And so, we'll have conversations and they'll kind of like check me a little bit. They're like, what do you mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's a learning experience. But I think for me, um, growing up in the United States, it's so hard not to fall into these systems and the propaganda that the US and the West is like, that's where it's at. And
Yeah.
this is the cream of the crop. And this is where people should be. And anyone that's not here, is kind of destitute or struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And for even though, I mean, at a young age, I knew that I wanted to work in Africa, but I think I always saw it from the lens of, I want to go help, the
Mm.
poor, impoverished, because that's all you see. And that's all we ever saw,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because I came here when I was so young, growing up and seeing that, that was also my perspective of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
That it was this place that was destitute, that was poor, that, just everybody was struggling. For the longest time, I didn't want to go back home. I was like, what am I going to go do in Gambia?
Yeah.
Everyone there is struggling. Um, and you find that a lot of, immigrants, especially people that immigrated here at a young age, or even people in the diaspora, feel the same way
Mm-hmm.
because that's all we've known.
No.
Like
Yeah.
even in elementary school, we would watch these videos and movies. They called it Black and African history, and it was just slavery and suffering. And I just felt like that was the constant. That's what Africa was. It was suffering. That's how it was portrayed.
Yeah.
So going into this, I also had those misconceptions. So, when I would meet these creatives and I would talk to them or I would do interviews or they'd reach out, I was so flabbergasted
Yeah.
sometimes because I'm like, wow. And not to say that these things don't exist, but in reality, they exist everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you live in Alameda, so you're in the
No,
good
don't do
side, but
that. Don't do that.
I live in Oakland, so no, I'm kidding. But I mean,
Oh, yeah.
everywhere you go, there is suffering.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I think I was just like, why are both sides not shown? Why is it only the
Mm.
Africa that is suffering that's
Yeah.
shown? And not to say that it shouldn't be shown, right? I think being honest and transparent about what's happening all over the world is important, but also the narrative is important.
Yeah.
How you're showing people an entire continent. And it's not just a country, like it's an entire continent. And it's always put into this box of, there's no infrastructure, there are no businesses, people that are uneducated,
Mm-hmm.
patriarchal, like just all of these negative views.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard to not, really
Fine.
start to believe that when that's all you see. So that was, yeah, I had a lot of misconceptions going into it, but I feel like for me, this is such a learning experience. Like it's my business, but I'm also learning so much. And I feel like I'm reconnecting to Africa and to my culture and to my people in a way that I would have never been able to had I gone down any
Mm.
other path. Um, and I think that's like the most important thing out of all of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. The evolvement there. And not only are you like creating that, but you're creating something that is reconnecting your soul back to like your home
Yeah.
in a way, which I feel like that brings on a new life of itself, right? So how do you like how have you evolved from that place?
Mhm. It's a great question. I think I'm still evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know if there will ever be like a time where it's like, okay, I've reached peak evolution
Yeah.
in this. But I do feel like the Aisha from 3 years ago and the way that I not only viewed Africa, but I also viewed myself being African
Mm-hmm.
has completely changed. And I think that's also a huge part of why I started this magazine. I wanted us to look at Africa and look at these creatives and feel a sense of pride. I didn't want us here in, the West or even back home to always look at how Africa is depicted and feel sad because
Mm.
that's not the reality of it.
Yeah.
So as we put out these images, as we work with these creatives, as we are showcasing this beautiful, like amazing, and you've seen some of these, I mean, they're
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Like I'm stunned. I'm always like, there's never a time where I'm not stunned by how beautiful it, whether it's designs, whether it's actual like photography, like there's just so many amazing creatives. And I wanted to build a platform where people from the diaspora, people from back home, non-Black people could look at Africa and feel that same sense of pride that I feel looking at it. And I feel like that's how we start. It's a long journey of decolonization.
Yes.
It's not easy. But I think, I wanted to fill that gap a little bit. And I just wanted to do, even if it's something very minute and small, I want somebody who comes on our page to see it and light up. And maybe the next time they think about Africa, that's what they'll think about, not the awful videos that they've seen about who we are as a people.
Yeah. And how do you balance the reality of, people still living a certain way on the continent versus also pushing this beautiful creation that many Africans are doing?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I don't even really see it as a separation. And I'm not trying to be blind, right? And I'm not trying to say Africa is perfect and, there's nothing wrong.
Low
Like,
key we are. Just kidding.
like, I mean, but no, I mean, there are deep issues within the continent that we all know about. But that is the result of so many different factors that are now no longer under our control, and then some that are under our control, that I feel like it will take years and decades to really work on. But I'm not trying to separate the two.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is actually show that even while that is happening, art is still there. Even while people are, maybe suffering or not having the best lives and the most privileged lives, they are finding ways to create art, right? And isn't that just so much more beautiful that somebody who, whose lights might turn off tomorrow or who may not necessarily have the ability to take care of themselves or don't know what they're going to do with their lives, they're still able to create. And I think that's what I'm trying to show,
Yes.
really. I'm trying to show that just because, someone is living a certain way or just because they're not living like us, that doesn't mean that they're not able to still create beautiful things. So I'm not trying to separate it. I'm not trying to make people blind to it.
Yeah.
A lot of creatives, like, I feel like art is political, right? Art is like, there's so many socio-political aspects of art. So even when creatives, they, create beautiful and meaningful art, there's always a story. And a huge part of our platform is that storytelling piece, right? So you'll see that we, talk to the creatives, we get their background, we get their story. Like, why did you start creating this? Art just doesn't appear, right? There's always a story and a reason. And I think in that way we show both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that because who better to tell our story but us?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that, by the way. Why is it important for you to connect content creators on the continent with the diaspora?
Yeah.
You might have touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. I love this topic. I love this topic because I think, and stop me because I might go down a rabbit hole.
Please
but
do.
I think what I was saying earlier about, these misconceptions that we
Yeah.
all have of Africa are real. And I think the wars, the inter-country wars or the, diaspora wars are also real. They shouldn't be. I'm not a fan of them, but I do feel like, people in the diaspora, and I've spent a lot of time with people in the diaspora, right? Because I grew up here. And I have, met people who, don't know where they're from. They're American. They don't know where they're from in Africa. But they still identify as African.
Yeah.
And I've met people who don't identify as African, which is fine, right? Black Americans, essentially are American. They've been here for so long. But I also feel like there is a disconnect that we can easily fix by communicating. And I think the best thing that has happened in terms of social media, I know there's lots of bad things that have happened in terms of social media, but there's that globalization where you can live a million miles away,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I can still connect, and you
Yeah.
and I can still find similarities. And we can be friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure everyone has an online friend that they've probably never met. And it's great. And I think what happens is that we're able to have a different picture of who we are as a race, who we are as Black people, who
Mm-hmm.
we are as Africans, who we are as African Americans, Afro Europeans, and even within the platform, you know, we discuss these different things, the nuances and the similarities between all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like there is a common string of identity, and over the years it has faded, it has been pulled,
Mm-hmm.
but I do feel like it can't be broken. And what I really want to show, you know, with this platform and with connecting, you know, folks in the diaspora with people back home, is that we have more in common
Mm-hmm.
than we have than we don't have in common.
Yeah.
So how do we lean into that rather than go against it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like for the longest time, we've been going against it. We've been trying to find our differences more than we've been trying to find our similarities. And it doesn't mean that we're all the same. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
we're all the same, but there's a beauty in not being the same, but still having this core connection of we were once the
Mm-hmm.
same. You know, maybe now we're not, but we were once the same. Our ancestors walked hand in hand. So, how do we now come together in that way where we can at least
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that you and I are one? Whether you grew up in America and I grew up, you know, in Ghana or Europe. And I think that just takes us one step closer to being more united.
Mm-hmm. Mic drop. No, seriously, wow, that's beautiful, and it aligns so much with our mission here on Self Reflection Podcast, because that's one of the things that I seek to push in society today, right? Not only with Africans, but with white people, whatever you decide to blue, green, Asian, right? Whatever you decide to
Yeah.
consider yourself as, you know, I go from the soul place, right? We're all the same soul,
Yeah.
right? We're all God,
Absolutely.
experiencing God in
Yeah.
different ways. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so I love your mission. Like, seriously, I love
Thank
everything you just
you.
said. So, so,
Thank you.
before we move on to that, move into the more of the questions about the platform, how do you, since we kind of talking about spirituality in this somewhat here,
Mhm.
right? How do you connect with that source within yourself?
Amazing question. um, it's interesting because for me, my relationship with God, my relationship with religion has changed so much over the years.
Mm.
And I think this happens to a lot of people,
I
you
will say,
know?
especially coming from an African
Yes,
family.
yes. So my dad is Muslim, but my grandmother here who raised my sister and I, she's Christian.
Mm.
Um, and we, you know, when I moved to the United States, we were going to church every Sunday, Bible study every Wednesday. And I still go to church today,
Mhm.
but my relationship with God has changed significantly.
Mhm.
I think growing up, I always saw God as this, you know, scary person who I had to obey. And if I didn't obey him, I would be punished, right?
Mm.
I would be going to hell, or I'm a bad person if I made mistakes. But down the line, in 2019, I was in a very severe car accident
Mm.
where I almost lost my life. And after that, and it's so interesting how the universe works. But before that, I wasn't going to church. I wasn't praying. I felt really disconnected. I was almost an atheist. I was like everyone in my life who were God fearing people, I could never look up to them. They were all
Mm.
people that I didn't want to emulate their behavior. I didn't feel like they, you know, I was like, and if that is what God represents, then I don't want any parts of that, you
Yeah.
know? So I felt very lost, and I was just in a lost space in my life in general, like
Yeah.
all over. So after my car accident, I was introduced to this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, I love that book.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And I was in my spirituality back. I was, I'm a person that if I find something, I will like dive into it 1,000,000%. So I read it and it was like mind blowing. Because these were not things that I had ever been introduced. Like, what is mindfulness?
Yes.
What is presence? What do you mean I'm not my thoughts? Like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, so that is when I was introduced to that, and I totally leaned in, and I feel like it came at such a perfect time because I felt so lost, but I knew that God had spared my life for a reason. And in reading these books and listening to these spiritual teachers, I feel like I really found myself. Or maybe didn't find myself. I felt found. And so from then on, that is kind of how I've lived my life. I would say I am deeply spiritual. I try to be as mindful as I can be. I feel like connecting to source for me is, grounding. I'm a yoga instructor, so I love yoga. That is the way that I love to move my body and also just be present and mindful. And being present is hard.
Yes,
It's very hard.
It's a full-time job
It
some
is,
more.
and some more. I'm telling you, yeah, it's very difficult. But in the moments where I am fully present, I feel everything. I feel the oneness, and I feel a sense of just calm in a way that I've never felt before. So yeah, that is my journey with spirituality. I'm still on the journey.
Yeah.
I fall off here and there, and I'm like, hey, I need to meditate. I need to get back into it. But it's a beautiful journey, and I think and what you were speaking to earlier, Lira, about how we're all connected, how we're all one. I think that is the greatest gift that I was given, was that acknowledgement that we're all one, and there isn't this like separate being that is looking down on us and, with the judgments, getting ready to pass judgment. But, we're all here to evolve into our highest self.
Yeah.
And that allows me to, one, not judge myself, but it also allows me to not judge other people, right? Everyone is on their own journey. And life is hard.
It is.
Life is hard. So also just acknowledging that has allowed me to, I think, heal my own trauma that I've had from my childhood, forgive the people that have hurt me, recognizing that it's just their level of consciousness or unconsciousness. And I think that has helped me just move on with my life and not carry the baggage from my past and, the fear and the hatred that I felt for a long time as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. I think we're going to double back on that.
Okay.
Something that I have on that
Okay.
from what you just said. But our question here is, how did you stay inspired when you started creating Afriknoire? And did you feel imposter syndrome, like we spoke to earlier?
Yeah.
And how did you overcome those emotions?
I'm trying to think back to the beginning. Yes. And I think every person that is creating something from scratch can probably attest to this. I did not know what I was doing. But I think something that I love about myself is my ability to acknowledge when I don't know something and ask for help. And from the beginning, I asked for help. So, I started the platform on my own. I was, connecting with creatives, reposting their work, talking to them, telling their stories. And, sometimes I would look at the page and I'm like, Isha, you are not a graphic designer. I'm like, you do not. And so, I knew, okay, so I need to bring somebody on that knows how to work Canva better than me, right? That has a better eye for design than I do. And my eye has, grown from then. And now I feel like I'm able to kind of put things together in a way that I wasn't before. But I didn't know. That was never something I, studied or learned. I feel like I was more of an academic than I was an artist. So from the beginning, I knew that I needed help. And it's so funny how the universe works and how God works is because I would connect with creatives and they'd be like, I really love what you're doing. You know, how can I be a part of this? I'm like, oh, great. I need a creative director. Oh, great. I need a social media manager. I was just collecting people like infinity stones. But
Yes.
it was really, I think I stayed inspired because my team was there.
Mm.
Because there were times, I mean, I've been doing this now for 3 years. In those 3 years, I've had ups and downs in my life. And I feel like when you're creating something by yourself and you're not at your best, it's easy for you to stop, right?
Yeah.
It's easy for you to
Yeah.
fall off. But when you have a team that says like, it's okay, Aisha, like I will step in and take over while you're gone
Yeah.
for a week because I was having a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Or when I have doubts, like, are people going to like this magazine? And they're like, of course they are. Like, we've worked so hard on it. So just like having that support helps you continue to grow. And because my team is in Africa, I think they also, you know, give me that reassurance that what I'm doing is impactful. And what we are doing really, because it's a team effort. And I always tell my team, like, listen, we're one. You guys are stuck with me. Like, you know, wherever I go, you guys go, because I mean, they're so instrumental in the business. Like, it's not really like I could not do any of this without them.
Yeah.
And I'm so aware of that. So I just knew from the beginning that I would need support in this endeavor. It wasn't something that I could do alone. So whenever I did have those moments of imposter syndrome or fear, we're launching something new right now, and I've, you know, kind of been afraid. And, you know, my team is like, it's okay. Like, and I'm like, okay, all right, it's okay then, you know. It's just, I think it's great to just have people there to reassure you,
Yeah.
you know, and to see things that you don't see, because sometimes your vision can be clouded when you're the one that's in it. So when people are, you know, there, but they're able to, you know, take a step back and look at things and tell you, it's okay, you're on the right path. It's okay, what we're doing is impactful. You know, that is helpful. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Because, okay, my team is also in Africa, which was very somewhat intentional when I, you know, created this whole thing. And hearing you go down that similar path and just having them being able to reassure you, I could definitely live through that, because there's moments where I knew in my journey that if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Absolutely.
Like, there's no
Absolutely.
way,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because there's been days where they had to carry me, like, financially, emotionally, just check me like, no, that's that's not it.
Aren't they the best?
Yeah, and it's the rawness that comes from them that I admire and I appreciate so much.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's such a beautiful journey. Wow. And do you, as a creator here in the Bay Area, do you ever feel the, like, how do I put this? Do you ever feel as if the work that you're doing, right, it's not being recognized much because of the
tech
people,
bros.
yeah, the people that you're putting,
Yeah.
you're trying to bring light to?
Yeah. I guess I never really intended for it to resonate in like here. Like, my platform was always meant to be international.
Okay.
And a lot of that is, you know, online. But I think a lot of what you're saying is very valid. The Bay Area, for the work that you and I are doing, there is a community here, but there's also bigger communities elsewhere. And I feel like the Bay Area in general is very tech oriented, right? Like, everyone here is some kind of engineer, or so that's what, you know, the meetups are about, and that's what the events are about. So I haven't necessarily began to figure out what that looks like for the business to start having those in-person community-oriented events. But it is something that my team and I have talked about, because I do think it's important to have those in-person meetups, to, you know, have people see people face to face. But I think that's more down the line as we continue to grow. But yeah, I guess I've just never really tried. I feel like with us, it's kind of like whoever this resonates with, it resonates with. I will never force it down anyone's throat. I think people that see the vision, you know, and if you don't see the vision, then it's okay. It's not for you.
Yes.
So yeah, I haven't even begun. I feel like that's a whole nother beast to tackle. So right now, I'm just focusing on one beast at a
I love it.
time. Yeah.
And how do you balance work life and being able to create this as well, managing
Yeah.
this whole space?
There's this amazing woman named Emma Greed that I have been obsessed with. She's a businesswoman, and she always says there's no such thing as work life balance, which is so interesting to me because I feel like I'm someone like my partner is he's like work, 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 work. And I'm like, you need to relax. Like, it's not always work. But when I started this endeavor, I realized that there were days where I was just working, working, working. And then you don't even realize it until you come up for air.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh my goodness, I've been working for 4 weeks and I haven't,
Yes.
really taken time to relax.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because this week I actually took a break. And I told my team, we had our team meeting, and I was like, guys, I'm going to be offline for 4 days. Nobody disturb me. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to, and they're amazing. And they're like, yes, do it. Everything will be fine. We'll take care of everything. But I was starting to feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
And because I do still have a full-time job.
Mm.
So honestly, I have two full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So it was starting to become overwhelming because I hadn't been prioritizing myself, my
Mm-hmm.
mental health. I hadn't, been doing the things like I also run, and running for me is like my way of decompressing and, just taking time for myself. I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't doing any of that. So I really took this week to reset. So I really feel like it's about having boundaries with yourself. Because
Mm.
when you are all in for something and when this is your baby, you will pour 110% of yourself into it,
Mm.
right? Because you want to see it grow,
Yeah.
but then you realize that you're neglecting yourself and you're not taking time to feed your soul.
Mm.
Um, and it's a learning curve. It really is a learning curve because I feel like I heard all of these things before I started the business, right? Everyone was like, make sure you don't overdo it, make sure
Yes.
you take care of yourself. But then it's not until you're in it that you realize it's so easy to get lost in the hustle and bustle of trying to build something
Mm-hmm.
that you're not as present for your own life. So that was literally, it's so funny that we're having this conversation because that is how I was feeling last week.
Yeah.
So I told myself I'm going to take, and even during the days I was supposed to be off, I found myself checking my email and, doing things. And I had to like put my phone down,
Yeah.
like disconnect. It's okay. It's not going to burn down because you're gone for 4 days, but it's hard. It's hard when you're building something and you want it to be
Mm-hmm.
great. Of course, you want to give your all, but I think just setting those boundaries with yourself, knowing what your non-negotiables are, making sure that you're doing things that feed your soul. Because if you're not right, your business will not be right.
Yeah.
The people that depend on you will not get the best of you because you're not able to give them that if you're not in a right place. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for that reminder. Because sometimes I definitely get lost in this world, this creating world. And sometimes I'm like, friends, family members, kind of
Yeah.
everything just kind of falls on the side. But at the same time, it's like, it's hard not to get lost in it because, this is something that, like you said, you're building something that you want to see it succeed. So you feel as if you're not there, right,
Hmm.
something is not, it's not going to go
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a space that I've been in for a long time too.
Yeah.
And I always have to also remind myself sometimes, like, okay, you need a break here,
Hmm.
you need to do this, you need to do that, take away. As much as I encourage people to take time for themselves,
Yeah.
sometimes
You don't do
I have to
it.
remind myself, like, hey, you
Yeah.
need to go take a break,
Yeah.
like
And
I
I
oh, sorry, go
No, it's
ahead.
okay. I think what's also important to note is that both of us talked about having
Mm-hmm.
teams that support us. And I think there's also an aspect of building a team and then trusting them to do what you've built them up to do.
Mm.
So, and I really struggled with this. I felt like I had to be there 100% of the time, but that is the purpose of the team.
Yeah.
They're meant to be there to support you when you're not able to be there.
Yeah.
So if you need to take a break, trust that whoever you have, put in charge or the team that you've built up, they will take care of it and it will be
Yeah.
fine. But it's so hard,
Yeah.
right? It's like leaving somebody to watch after your baby.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, it's hard to do that. But it takes trust, and then it also takes like recognizing, as important as you are as the CEO of this a business that you're building, you being away for 1 week, you'll be fine. You're not that important that it will, that it will self-destruct if you're not
Yes.
there. So it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but I think just, recognizing that you cannot be everywhere all at once doing everything and still being able to like function just as a human being. Just even being a human being is hard work. Getting up every day and living life is hard enough.
Yes.
So on top of that, managing different things and being everything to everyone, it's just not
Yeah.
possible.
How do you, oh, you're still working on this if you are, balancing working, right? Your full time job and also like creating what you're creating,
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes for me, myself, it's like, I don't want to add people into this, but from outside in, people look at it, it's podcasting, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's doing so well. But then there's still that part of me where I'm still a regular
Mm-hmm.
9 to 5 type of person. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you balance that space? This question is for me now. Trying to live this, and not
Yeah.
because I feel like I don't want to dismiss my podcast life because
Totally.
that's still part of me. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's this other side of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you. You're looking at me.
No,
No, I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer, and I wish I did. But
yeah.
I will say I am very fortunate
Mm.
because I work for a mental health organization, a mental health nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
and our CEO is a Black woman. And she is like the best. And this, was my first job out of college.
Mm.
And I've had the best experience, the
Wow.
best experience. And,
Yeah.
you don't usually hear people that have good experiences at a nonprofit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much care
Mm-hmm.
that is implemented in all areas of the organization, right? And I work in strategic communication, so I work in development. But there's the way that our CEO treats the directors is how the directors in turn treat us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very flexible. It's very flexible. They prioritize our mental health. We have unlimited PTO.
Mm.
There's so much that
Yeah.
is given and poured into us, and they don't like bleed us dry,
Yeah.
right? Like, so the work is done, but there's no micromanagement. There's no, you need to work, 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 work. It's like such an amazing environment,
Yeah.
and then that allows me to then obviously hold this other piece that I'm working on and live life, because
Yeah.
oftentimes people are not able to live life and pursue other things while they have a 9 to 5, which is insane,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have to just dedicate your 100% of your time to this job, and then the little time you have rest, maybe you'll eat, maybe you'll sleep, maybe you'll see a friend or two,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're back to that job.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. So it's hard for me to speak to that because that's not my experience.
Yes.
Thankfully, I do have a job that allows me the time to take care of myself, work on my business, and also, give to my job. So it is a lot easier for me than it probably would be for somebody who has a more demanding nine to
Mm.
five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you're
know.
blessed.
I am. And it's crazy
Yeah.
because I was just thinking the other day, like it's still hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't imagine somebody who has to be in the office 5 days a week, whose boss is looking at them every 2 seconds to make sure they're doing the work that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
done, who has so many assignments. Like I can't even imagine. So people that do that and then they're still able to create something, I don't know how they do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, but it's also upsetting that more people aren't allowed to have a life outside of their job
Yeah.
or to pursue other things outside of their job. And when I think about it, I'm like, I am very blessed and I'm fortunate, but it's just so unfortunate that other people aren't able to do that. Because if I didn't have this job, Lyra, I probably wouldn't be doing all that I'm doing.
Mm.
So yeah, but unfortunately, it's capitalistic America. Yeah.
Talking about creative and what supportive advice would you have for young creators on the continent
Mm,
in this moment
mm,
looking to grow themselves, grow
yeah,
their art?
yeah. I would say just to keep creating. I know a lot of times, I think in anything, if you try something and maybe it's not acknowledged in the way that you want it to be acknowledged, you'll stop. And for people back home, I think it's that much more important because, sometimes this is what they're looking for in terms of their livelihood. So if it doesn't show any signs of, taking off, they might stop. Or if they don't feel like people are recognizing their arts, they might stop. And my advice would be to push past that. And I think this is honestly advice for anybody that's starting anything,
Yeah.
And this was advice that I had to take when I was starting this platform. And I'm still taking today, right? Is to push past the hardest times because I ultimately believe that anything that you give your all to will turn into something. And even if it's not that specific thing, what you will learn from that experience will help you get to wherever you need to be. So I feel like just keep going. You were called to this for a reason. Even with your podcast, you were called to this podcast for a reason. And even if it's just one person that's watching this, even if it's just one person that walks away feeling better because they watched your podcast, that is important. And I feel like it's so unfortunate because the world that we live in, money is at the center of everything. So sometimes I like to, and I'm fortunate to do this, I recognize my privilege, but sometimes I like to think about things not through the lens of how much money can I make. So even when I created this magazine, I wasn't trying to be the most profitable person in the world. I was just trying to create a platform to help other people. And I think whenever you're moving from a place of genuine care for the world and you're trying to make the world a better place, it's going to be hard, right? Because things that try to make the world a better place are not the most profitable
Yes.
things, right? Unfortunately. But I do feel like if you're in that space, you are called to that space. And whether that's through art, whether that's through creating art that moves people, whether that's through, a nonprofit or whatever work that people are doing that is meant to make the world a better place, you will always be at a crossroads at one point where it's, do I abandon this and go to corporate America and try to make money, or do I keep pushing this and see where it leads me? And I would just say keep pushing and see where it leads you.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we're creating, right, especially when it's coming from the internal self, that's us being in spirit,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you right there. How do you quiet the doubt? I know you kind of just talked about this a little bit, but how do you quiet the doubt when fears try to creep in?
I think one thing that I've learned through my mindfulness journey is that you don't even necessarily have to quiet it, right? I think you just have to look at it. And that is what I've learned is when those doubts come up, when those thoughts come up, when those voices come, and they will come.
Yeah.
It's a part of life. I don't try to push it away because oftentimes when you push it away, it'll come back 10 times stronger. So I try to look at it. Like I sit here, it sits there, and we're looking at each other. And when you really look at some of these doubts, some of these fear-based thoughts, you'll recognize oftentimes when it's not your voice, it's not you. I mean, it's never really you, but you'll be able to pinpoint, oh, that was that girl in second grade that told me I wasn't going to be anything in life, or that was my aunt that used to beat me when I was younger. And she, you know what I mean? Like things like that come up. When you are introspective and you're curious with these doubts and these thoughts and some of these, self-deprecating thoughts that come up, you recognize that it's not you, it's never been you, and they're linked to something else. And that's the journey, and I think it's hard because, you have to sit with it, you have to look at it, you have to see where does it come from. But I promise you that one thought, it's not only showing up now, it's probably shown up in so many different ways, right? So when you take the time to really sit with it and acknowledge it, you don't have to get mad. You don't have to get angry. Just really sit with it and be curious. Where did you come from? What do you mean by that? What do you mean my business is not going to be successful? Where did you get evidence of that? I think that helps you disidentify from it. Because one, you're taking it out and you're putting it here.
Yeah.
So you know you and this thought are not one. This is not the ultimate truth. But then it also helps you not quiet it, but I think it helps you return to yourself. And your truest self will never tell you that you need to stop. This is not what you need to be doing when you know that this is what you're being called to do. So I think it's just a matter of knowing that those thoughts are going to come. Sometimes they're going to be stronger and louder, and sometimes they will take over. So even the times where they do take over and, you know, maybe it's for a week or days where you're in this place of just feeling like stuck and you're feeling down because these thoughts have multiplied and they've taken over, being able to pull yourself out of that. It's all energy. So how do we do that? It's hard, but having a practice that allows you to recognize when you're in that space, when you're in that space of negativity, and we all get there.
It's just part of life.
You know what I mean? It's just part of life. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, and it's like it's a trance, right? There is this amazing author Tara Brach, and she talks about some of these different trances, like the trance of unworthiness, and it's a trance. So when these thoughts come and they take over you, then you're stuck in a trance, right? And that can last weeks. Sometimes, unfortunately, that lasts lifetimes for people. But when you have the gift of mindfulness, you're able to, you know, reflect and take yourself out of that space and recognize that this is not who you are. This is just something that showed up. You know, you can let it be here and then let it go. So I think the art and the practice of mindfulness has helped me a lot in that. And ultimately, I think just recognizing that if this does not work out in the way that I want it to work out, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of expectations, truly. I'm just doing today what I feel like I need to be doing today. I don't have any expectations of what this business needs to be or what this, and I honestly even have a hard time calling it a business.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like it's a calling. And, you know, and I love this podcast and I love the way that you have set up this space, because I think oftentimes when I do podcasts, it's like, so what is the business? You know, where's the money? What is the, you know, how do we get? And I'm just like, I don't know. You know, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
But when you look at this from an inner calling perspective of just I'm doing what I feel like I'm being called to do, then it's different.
Yeah.
That profit capitalistic, you know, space is not one that I like to be in at all. Like I work for a nonprofit. I'm not that person that needs to be a multimillionaire. I don't like, so creating something like this for me, I would love if I can do this full time.
Yes.
And that is what drives me. Not necessarily to be super profitable and rich, but I would love if I could do this full time because I know that I could impact more people if I could do this full time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love your answer here. You know, I feel like your equator is just like in your ear, like
yes.
be in the moment now.
Yes, be present. I love Eckhart. I love him. Yeah.
Be present.
Yeah.
Only now exists. But yeah, okay, wow. You know, I love your answer, by the way, you know, because, yeah, you can have multi-million-dollars or whatever you have, but whose life are you touching? Are you making a difference in the world? And when you leave this world, are you even going to take those things with you, you know?
Exactly.
So I love this. And this is why Africa is changing, because we're evolving.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, wow. Beautiful. What does the future holds for the creators? On your platform?
Yeah.
Where do you see that evolving to?
Future is bright.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. Where we are right now, you know, we're trying to continue to build up our creatives in a way that makes them want to create more.
I love it.
So, you know, this year we're launching 2 issues of the magazine because it was actually our first year officially launching the magazine. Before we were just completely, you know, online on social media and our website. But the years following, we will have 3 issues a year. So my hope is that knowing that there is the chance to be a part of this issue that will be distributed worldwide, would continue to help the creators want to create because they know that there's a platform out there for them, right? And our social media platform will continue to grow, and we want to continue to, tell the stories behind these creators and continue to give them a platform. But my hope is that they can become profitable in their art, they can continue to make art, and they can see just how beautiful and important the work that they're doing is. And oftentimes, I see, and this is not to bash anybody's creativity, but I think the art that has been forced down our throat here, in the US specifically, I'll speak to the US, like sometimes I compare that to some of these creatives and the work that they're doing. And I'm baffled because that is where they need to be. This is the level of creativity that they're actually at.
Yeah.
These pieces, I think I saw something the other day. It was a white or a plain board. It was empty. And it sold for some millions of dollars because they said it was imaginary. I'm not joking. Like they said it was an imaginary like image and it was sold for like 1 point something million
No
dollars.
way.
I swear. Or it will be like some scribbles. Like, I mean, and I'm not, maybe to some people, this is really what they see as art. But I'm just, for me, I don't get it.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Where's
don't
the
get.
creativity?
Yeah, I'm like, where's the creative genius
Yeah.
behind that? So I want to get these creatives to a space where their art can really be seen and valued.
Yeah.
And they can be profitable. This can be, their life. Because a lot of these creatives, this is what they want to do. This is what they feel called to do. But unfortunately, the way that things have happened historically, a lot of people are living in survival mode.
Oh yeah.
And in survival mode, you don't have space to create. In survival mode, you're just trying to live. You're just trying to survive. And that is what I hope that we can do, is help these creatives be able to showcase their God-given talent. And sometimes this is what you were meant to do. This is what you were brought on this earth to do. I just think about some of the great, artists that have shaped my life, whether it's through music or through film or through photography or writing, like there's so many different creative outlets that I feel like can touch people, really touch people and change lives. And unfortunately, a lot of creatives aren't able to lean into that because they're so worried about other things. So I want to continue to put creativity at the forefront of the work that we're doing because I think it's just as important as STEM. I think it's just as important as some of these tech, people that are running these building robots and doing all types of
Yes.
things. I think it's just as important, if not more important, because art speaks to people. Art changes lives in all of its mediums. So why don't we lean into that? Why is it seen as something that's not serious?
If that's a question, but I want to chime in there a little bit because I feel like, when we're able to, when we're pushed away from creating our art and not letting that part of ourselves be expressed, then we are detached from our
Absolutely.
true self.
Absolutely.
So I think maybe this is real, maybe it's not, maybe I'm just making things up, being a conspiracy theory. But I think society knows that, and society is making sure that people do not tap into their conscious and subconscious mind. And not only that, people do not tap into that third eye world because that's where creation really comes
That
from.
is. Yeah.
So if many people in society starts to create, that means that they're tapping into the godlike self of them. And society can't have that happen because it wants us to stay in survival mode. It wants us to stay in fear, anger, frustration. If people are creating, then they can't go to war.
Yeah.
They can't go kill people.
Absolutely.
You know, because creating is more love. It's
Yeah,
gentle. It's peaceful. So
It is. Yeah, and
I don't know
that's
if there was
beautifully
a
said.
question.
No, I mean it's more of a
Yeah.
general question, but yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And I
Yeah.
think when we really think about it at the core of creating, you know, when an artist sits down and paints for 4 hours and they're in the state of bliss and they're creating something so beautiful and magical, you know, that's peace.
Yes.
And I feel like that is the true nature of
Who we are.
and who we're meant to be. So I think, you know, and going back to Africa's history and, you know, the pain that is really there, you
Yes.
know, I think moving to that space where people can find out who they are, really, because that's also what creating is about.
Yes.
You find out who you are, who your soul is, what your soul's mission is, and your purpose. So if more people could connect to that, and by way of doing that, connect to source and connect to God, that brings more peace. That brings more love.
Yeah.
And that is something that can uplift a nation, not just, you know, tech and economic. You know, money is one thing and money is needed, unfortunately, you know, in this
Yes.
world. But, you know, feeding the soul, I think, is the most important job that we have. And art does that in so many different ways. I mean, how many times have you listened to your favorite song and you've cried? You know, how many times have you read, you know, a piece of poetry or read something that just really hits you in a way? And it's like you can't even put words to it sometimes, right? It's that deeper feeling, that deeper knowing, you know, the true self that recognizes that this is what I connect with. This is the vibration that, you know, I want to be on. So, yeah, that's my goal. My goal is to really push art and push creativity in a way that doesn't always put it as something that people shouldn't be proud of. You
I
know?
agree. And that's why I think the work that you're doing is so beautiful. It's amazing. It's much needed. You know, yeah, seeing your work reminds me, like, you're not the one that's telling all the stories, but it still reminds me of, I might be saying it wrong, the griot. They used to be in, you know.
So that's actually a very huge part of my culture.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
So
they're
that's
storytellers.
yes. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
what I see when I went on your platform and I looked at it. I'm like, wow, so many stories being told on here, so many
It's so
beautiful things.
that
So
you said that.
yeah, it's much needed
It's
work.
so beautiful that you said that.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, getting into our final questions
Okay.
here. What's the mindset you had prior to you creating Afriknoire? What's the mindset you are in right now, and what type of mindset do you see your future self having? Which
a
the
wonderful
Equator will say
question.
they're all in one.
They're all in one, right? There's no future, just now. Wow. So before I started Afriknoire, like I said, I was trying to be a lawyer. I was going to go into corporate law. Can you imagine? I'm like, now that I think about it, the person that I am now, they would eat me up and chew me and spit me out in seconds. Like, I cannot even, I don't know. Yeah. So it's just so funny looking back at it because I was determined. You know, I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go into corporate law. I'm going to make partner. I'm going to be super rich. I'm going to live in a high rise in New York. Very materialistic. And of course, you know, it's not lost on me that that is the country that I live in. That is where I was pushed to, you know, consciously or subconsciously. You know, that was the goal. You know, the goal is to be rich in the United States. The goal is to make a lot of money. So that is the mindset that I had before. I very much was, you know, I was materialistic. I wanted, you know, and it wasn't even necessarily just being materialistic, but I wanted to put myself on this pedestal of like, I did all the things right. I, you know, have all this money. I'm, you know, a lawyer. Like, it was just very much giving like not authentic.
Yeah. Probably the African background didn't help with
Totally.
that.
Yeah. And I knew that if I did that, you know, I would be praised, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that is, and I think that's why a lot of people and kids do it from, you know, Africa and diaspora as well, is like, you know, I want to do this, but ultimately it's because so I can say that I did it, or so
Yeah.
my parents can say that I did it. But there's no, you know, for a lot of people, there's no true connection to what they're doing. So that was the mindset that I had before I started Afriknoire. Now I think the mindset that I have, I think now I think I'm just more determined to help others in a way that I wasn't before. You know, before I was just trying to elevate myself.
Yeah.
I was just very, very self, you know. That was the motivation. It was me. But I think I try in my everyday life as well. I try to help other people because one, I'm a firm believer that anything that you put out will come back around, but also it makes me feel like I'm being a good steward of this life that was given to me because I recognize the privilege that I have. I recognize if you're able to help somebody, you have privilege, right? So I think that is the course and the path that I'm on. And it translates into the work that I do at Afriknoire, even with my team. You know, I feel like now I've kind of been thinking about more ways that I could uplift my team. You know, they're all in their early 20s, you know, trying to figure out life. They're based in Africa. Like, how do I uplift them? How can I be a good leader? And I think that is the space that I'm in right now. Like, how can I model a good example of what it is to be a leader in this space? And how can I continue the work that I'm doing in a way that is profoundly connected to my calling and who I feel like I am? So it's very layered, it's nuanced. I don't think I'm getting it right all the time, but I feel like I'm learning a lot along the way. And it's a gift to be in this space. And I'm so grateful because I feel like it's not everyone that starts off on this path that continues to see it through, but for some reason I'm still here. So I'm really grateful. And I think in the future I want to continue to be in this space. I want to continue to be in the space of gratitude, and I don't want to lose who I am, no matter where this company business goes. You know, I want to remain rooted and grounded in the why of why I started this platform to begin with.
Thank you. That was so touchy. I'm like, maybe we should have had a different conversation more about mindfulness and spirituality.
Yeah, another time.
And
I'll come back anytime, Lira.
So beautiful. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Of course.
You know, thank you guys so much for watching Self Reflection Podcast. This has been such a fun conversation to have. So thank you, Isha, for joining us on here. Before we go, do you have any final words for our friends and family members watching?
Wow. I know. I feel like we should have had a different conversation about mindfulness now. I didn't, you know, I did some research, but you know, it's always different when you're here in person. But thank you. Thank you, Lira. I appreciate this platform that you've built. And I guess my words will be for you.
Thank you.
I hope that, you know, you continue to stay rooted and grounded in who you are and why you started this. And just from our conversation today and other conversations I've seen on your page, like, this is impactful work that you're doing. And I'm so glad that you found yourself here and that we were able to connect and find each other. So I wish you the best and thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. I share the blessings with y'all. Thank you again so much for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. Guys, I want to remind you in this moment, if you have yet to subscribe to Self Reflection Podcast, please go ahead and hit that subscription button. I'll truly appreciate it as we seek to grow our community here on Self Reflection Podcast. Before we head out, how can we follow you and where should we follow
Absolutely.
you?
So Afriknoire magazine on Instagram. That's Afriknoire with an E magazine. We also have our website, afriknoiremagazine.com. So you can follow us on those two platforms. We also have an amazing newsletter that goes out every Friday. So you can subscribe to hear directly from the team, or you can also join our broadcast channel on Instagram.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have a blessed day. Take care of yourself, love yourself, be kind, and be gentle with yourself. Until next time. You're listening to Self Reflection Podcast, and this is your girl, Lira. Ta-da!